Another episode of Debt Nation, where we are busy putting death out of business. It's Benzion 2020 here to update us on some USTP news. The title of this episode is called Donald Trump versus Zoltan It's Fun. And that's big news, people, because transhumanism, it's another media play. But what do you reckon? Benzion, you're here with all the news. Zoltan It's Fun, who's the founder of the USTP, the United States Transhumanist Party, and he's, according to the CNET article I'm reading, he's the leader of world transhumanism, which is kind of cool, and he's challenging Donald Trump from within his own party. Now, you're the endorsed candidate of his founded party, the United States Transhumanist Party, who we're going for here on Debt Nation. That's Benzion 2020. Check it out. Send him an email. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's rock into this and let's talk about it. How do you feel about this maneuver, Benzion 2020?
Well, I am very interested in this maneuver, and I have a tremendous respect for Zoltan and his instincts as a political operator. And so I'm interested in this. I see the Republican Party as being an institution perhaps on a certain precipice. And so I see a move towards something like away from this hyper-nationalism and the kind of religiosity in this organization, maybe to something that I'm more interested in. I'm, of course, a universalist. People know this about me from our many panel discussions on religion and transhumanism. I believe that all people live within God's grace. And I would like to see the GOP move in that direction. I think that they could become a Christian transhumanist organization instead of a Christianist organization, as they are. And so I'm interested in Zoltan and the work that he's doing within that organization. And I'll also say, like you said, that this has just been picked up today on CNET. It's being picked up in other major media. I know already a lot of talk radio folks are talking about this. I have an invitation to come on to one of those shows and talk to them a little bit about what Zoltan is doing. And so we're doing a little bit more press out of this. The other side of that, transhumanists are already people who get death threats. We already get hate mail. We already have troublesome encounters of this kind. And so I would expect Zoltan Isfin, someone who is challenging this man, Donald Trump. His followers are quite fanatical. Some of them have done some pretty strange and upsetting things in the last few years. And so I am concerned for my friend Zoltan Isfin. I hope that his life will not be in danger. As a serious challenger in this upcoming GOP primary, that remains a distinct possibility. I know that sometimes there is a waxing and waning of the kinds of troubles that I've described, hate mail and death threats. And I know that people in this organization who were aware of this event were concerned that this may ratchet up in the coming months.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. The death threats. I mean, you've got a lot of Baptists inside of the Republican Party, and Baptists are well known to be quite anti-transhumanist, as opposed to Mormons, who we have on the show here, where Mormonism seems to be moving in the direction of a pro-transhumanist trend. And although it seems to be somewhat of a splinter fringe at the moment, there's hope there that from what Lincoln Cannon, for example, is saying, that there could be a more and more acceptance of transhumanism within Mormonism in the coming years and decades as that gerontocracy sort of shuffles around a little bit. Mormons don't seem to be antithetical to the idea. There's not that many anti-transhumanist Mormons. Now, on the other hand, Baptists, talking about Baptists, definitely anti-transhumanist. They even have it written into their theology, into their organizational theology at the moment, that they do not believe that God will allow the singularity to happen, the singularity that Ray Kurzweil is talking about. That's an official notice from the Baptists. So every time you talk to a Baptist pastor, they will premise their idea, they will premise their notion with, I do not believe this will happen on an official level, but let's play this scenario out as if God was going to allow it to happen. So Baptists on a theological level and on an organizational level are anti-singularity and therefore anti-transhumanist. Now, Zoltan Itzvan, he's a man who, with an augmented reality, he has a chip in his hand. He has a chip that he can do multiple things with, a programmable chip in his hand. And he launched in a big way. He mainstreamed transhumanism in a big way. He has a big media footprint, and this is going to be a really interesting play. Do you see this as something? You mentioned death threats. Do you think this is something that is a media play for transhumanism, that he's just doing this to get more exposure, or do you think he actually has a shot within the GOP, decidedly conservative organization, a political organization?
Well, I'll say this. In 2015, when the Trump campaign was ratcheting up, there was people saying the exact same thing. This is just a man who's trying to sell a few extra steaks. He's trying to sell a few extra enrollments in Trump University. This is not a serious campaign. He just wants to build out his media operation and so forth. And that's not what happened. So we already know that this organization has become less micromanaged than it was in previous years. And that perhaps bodes well for techno-futurists. And I would say that people would be wise to consider this to be a very serious campaign. And the press and the responses that I've seen to this thus far suggest that people are taking this quite seriously, and that, as I said, we should be prepared to buckle up and get ready for a little bit of bumpy ride, as you mentioned. These Baptists, they don't necessarily agree with life extension. They are against the singularity. They believe that God will prevent this from happening because it's too troubling of a thing to contemplate. And so they often refer to folks like us as Luciferians. And I would say that these are not people who would probably even be folks that Ben Zion 2020 would try to court, or that Zoltan Itzvan would try to court. But this is a relatively small part of Christendom. This is a relatively small part even in the United States. About 45% or somewhat less of people identify as Protestant in the United States. And a relatively small percentage of those would be these people who have these ideas that I would describe as a little bit psychotic. But that is not to say that we should not support our Christian friends. We have many fine Christian friends who do not subscribe to this fear-based thinking. We have many fine Christian friends in this organization who are life extensionists. And even if they have some relation to religious literalism, they're a part of the team as far as I'm concerned. But some of these people within these other organizations do have upsetting and confused worldviews.
You know, the analysis here from Detonation, and I've been contemplating this maneuver for a little while now, and I think there might have been, and I can only speculate as a commentator, on the sidelines, but there might have been some encouragement by the GOP, not necessarily the Trump campaign, but the GOP, as Zoltan Itzvan as a respondent to, or a counterweight to, Andrew Yang. What would you say to that?
Yes. Well, that is a distinct possibility because Zoltan Itzvan's basic income is more substantive. It is a Social Security for all measure that it would be larger than Andrew Yang's. So that is a very distinct possibility. But of course, it is not a great puppet master within the GOP who is making this decision. This was made by Zoltan Itzvan and his team. But that is, I would say, that is a distinct possibility that we will see that kind of back and forth between those two candidates. in the coming months as well. And
Well,
I'll also
well,
say
well.
that
The
of
reason
all
I
of these
say it, the
parties, the
reason I
U.S.
say it,
Transhumanist Party. Oh, please.
the reason I say it is because we've been talking about the fact that we've been saying it because yeah. So we've been saying it because we've been saying that the GOP is a dinosaur party, that they don't have any good ideas, that they don't have any that they've been running this conservative theme for way too long. And that they need some of this tech optimism. This is a perfect way to establish that foundation. I mean, Zoltan, he gets to grow out his media. It's a win-win for everybody, right?
Yes, I would say that it is a win-win for the American people, potentially, when anyone who is interested in digitalization, who is interested in this set of public health outcomes that we concern ourselves with, which we call life extension, who is interested in things like a basic income that would restore this middle class. These things that Zoltan Isfin not only represents in his platform that has been released in recent days, but he is also someone who is an originator of these ideas in many ways, and he deserves respect for that. These are not ideas. Some simple contrast to GOP platforms of the past. These are revolutionary notions, and they are necessary for us to survive the 21st century. So I would encourage folks to find ways to get the word out to their friends in the grand old party, and encourage them to vote in that primary for Zoltan if they are registered Republicans. Of course, if a Republican is not going to win in that race, you should vote United States Transhumanist Party. You don't have to always be doing this strategic voting.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, that's very interesting news there. I've got to go quick today. Quick on the USTP news. It's also the 5-year anniversary. So Gennady, the chairman, has also released a statement there. You can go and check that out at the transhumanist-party.org on the front page right now. There's a lot of good points there. It's a 5-year anniversary. The USTP has come a long way in 5 years. What do you say, Ben?
Yes, we are celebrating our 5-year anniversary this month. That was on November 7th. The chair of our organization is also celebrating an anniversary in these recent days as well. So it's an exciting time for organizers in technofuturism and the United States Transhumanist Party.
Absolutely. And there's some really good points here. The development of a tiered membership system, continued membership growth by reaching new demographics, continued creation and creative utilization of media, the anti-troll campaign, candidates for non-presidential office, building alliances with like-minded organizations, development of systematic plan for ballot access. Just some of the great points coming out of that statement. So if you're interested, go and check out that statement from the chairman, Gennady Stolyarov II, who's written up a really good, in-depth analysis there, or briefing for people right there on the Transhumanist Party website. How is your campaign going, Ben? I've got to run. How's your campaign going?
My campaign is going well. As I mentioned, we're doing a lot of press, some radio shows in the past week, and other appearances, a lot of things in the works. I am also pleased to hear that Zoltan Isfin has entered the race. For one thing, he is my friend. But also, I think that anything that advances the causes of life extension and digitalization and moving us all into the 21st century, these are worthy undertakings. And I hope I know that we will be able to have good dealings within the United States Transhumanist Party and with the GOP under Zoltan Isfin, or with this campaign itself. As I've said, I spoke to Zoltan quite recently, including today, on this matter, and I'm pleased to congratulate him on his announcement.
Very cool. He says here in just going back to that one, he says here in the CNET article, our goal is to try and really get the GOP to embrace a new way of looking at the world, one that is futuristic and transhuman. It's fun told me. I think it's quite possible to be fiscally conservative and open-minded. Naturally, we're taking on Trump too, who I don't think is helping science and tech much. You know, there's a lot packed in there. You know, we've had words to say about Trump and his tech policy. You know, some people say it's good through deregulation, that there's been a lot of positive deregulation. And when we're talking about the FDA and other things, you know, there's positives in there. But a lot of people say, well, there's been a lot of cuts and a lot of misallocation of capital and stuff. That's a show for another day. We'll have to run there. I've got to go, Ben.
Yes,
thank you.
I would say that the basic income of Zoltan Isfin is a rather a fiscally conservative one. Economists like Milton Friedman and many other conservative economists had supported this over many years because it grows the economy, it strengthens the middle class. The game that the GOP has played for many years, a two Santa Claus theory. Where they demonize social programs and necessary safeguards in the civil society in the interest of scoring political points. It must end, and we must do better by our middle class. So the GOP is well on the path to becoming a truly fiscally conservative organization with Zoltan Isfin in the mix.
Yeah, I totally embrace and endorse this notion. You know, of Zoltan Isfin going in there. I think the party, it has to evolve. It has to change if it wants to keep up with the times. And I think Zoltan is the man to do it. Even if he can't beat Trump, it's good to have his voice and his concerns pervading that party, because otherwise that party will split into two or three, and that's not what that party wants. And that's why I think they'll embrace this move. They need an Andrew Yang type talking points in there, because as we go into the singularity, all the points are becoming the same. It's all ending up as the same sentence. We're all going in together. So that's really good. Thank you, Ben, for coming on this super quick episode of Detonation. Trump versus Zoltan Isfin, 5-year anniversary. Ben's on 2020. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. Yes, please go to transhumanist-party.org/membership. Sign up today. Do what you can to support this organization. Do what you can to support futurists around the world. Thanks, folks. Thanks for having me, Steele.
Thank you. Detonation.